Hey everybody, this is James Furlo. We're just getting ready to kick off our Furlo Bros Tech Podcast right here, episode 221. It's going to be awesome, but we wanted to give you fair warning that there will definitely be Star Wars related spoilers in this particular episode, and definitely at the beginning. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, what is wrong with you? And B, feel free to not watch right now for you watching this on YouTube, and go to furlobros.com. It'll be episode 221. In the final version that we have that you can download, we'll actually tell you how far to scrub ahead so that you're not spoiled or anything like that. So with that, we're going to
say, if you jump into the middle of the live broadcast and we let something slip, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah,
we did our best.
Yeah. But yeah. So with that, we're going to get started. And just a little bit here. Once that. All right, here we go. You are listening to the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast, episode 221.
Welcome to episode 221 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is December the 20th, 2015. I'm Matthew Dean Furlo, and having just watched Star Wars Episode 3.5, A New Hope Awakens, is my brother James Furlo.
3.5. Okay, all right.
I just wanted to set the tone for, my cynical tone.
What, really? Okay.
All right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you. So I literally saw it this afternoon, and so I'm only like maybe 3.5 hours out, and I want to watch it again. I'll be honest.
I just want to let everybody know remind everybody what my New Year's resolution this year was.
Yeah.
And that was to be better about not being angry about movies. They're just movies. They don't have to be mad or disappointed or anything. I can just go in, say, you know what? That was really enjoyable, and walk out. Don't have to be a grumpy curmudgeon. That being said,
how's that working out for you?
It was hard this week. It was hard.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and this is clearly. So Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens came out this week, and I got in line.
So I went. Like I said, I went. It's Sunday afternoon, and I bought my tickets ahead of time on Fandango, last night. But and it was a good thing that I did, because it was totally sold out Sunday afternoon.
Really?
And when we left, there was another line waiting to get in.
Holy cow!
For later that evening. So I mean, we're talking Corvallis, right? Which is there's not a crazy number of people, but I know that, and there's 2 theaters that are showing it too, which normally only one of the 2 theaters gets a movie.
I don't want to go into breaking news too fast, but it does appear that Star Wars will beat The Lost World for largest opening weekend ever. I think they actually fell short of their target by about 10 million, which is interesting because they were going for 250. And it looks like they're going to come in just under 240 domestically.
Oh, bummer.
So you saw it a couple hours ago. I went and saw it Thursday night at 10:30, as I have something that sort of looks like a job that I don't do most days. I was able to stand in line on Thursday, and we actually got there. We got to the theater for a 10 o'clock showing at 3 in the afternoon. So I was in line.
You got good seats, in other words. Who sat front row?
Ooh, yeah. We sat remarkably far forward, but I tend to be somebody who likes to sit far forward. Given the choice between being a little off center and a little too far forward, I always pick too far forward.
Because were you 3D'ing it up? I can't remember.
3D IMAX. I mean, we went all out, but we bought our tickets on Fandango. episode brought to you by Fandango, was we bought our tickets like I think I told the story. The Fandango was crashing the night that the tickets went on sale.
Yeah.
And I kind of got all jumpy and decided to buy the tickets there. And I bought 6 tickets, only knowing one other person that was willing to come with me to that particular showing, just figuring I'd be able to get rid of the other 6 tickets.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I did. Yeah, it's so I will say this. Okay, let me start there. Did you like it?
I did, and to be honest, I got that exact same feeling after the first Matrix movie, where the credits are coming up because of the way it's done, and you're just like, no, stop, keep going. There's we're just getting started, and which as a director, I'm sure that's exactly what they want, and as a studio, I'm sure as well. It was also so I liked it. I mean, it was super familiar and
yes.
Semi-predictable. And it's like, had you asked me ahead of time, I was purposely trying not to guess what was going to happen and trying not to interpret the trailers. And so I tried to walk in with a very open mind of like, yeah, I'm here to be entertained. But once it gets started, and I like it where like they kind of made fun of themselves a little bit in the middle, where it was like, can't we just blow it up? That's worked before.
Yeah, it's got to have a weakness.
Yes.
Yeah, Han being Han. Yeah, and I don't know. It's funny. I make that joke of, it is so. I've heard it described as almost a reboot of the series, and then it's like a semi remake. It's like a semi remake of episode 4 in a lot of ways. This is what's so weird to me. It's almost like it draws a lot of parallels to the Star Trek reboot that J.J. Abrams did, where it's a lot of the same themes and stories. You just kind of jumble it all up together and see what comes out. And I it's funny. Like I get, it was very safe. It was very safe. And because to me, like, I think it would have been amazing if they hadn't shown the super weapon firing. They just talked about what it was capable of, and then the rebels didn't wipe it out, but just disabled it and took it offline for a while. And it was a harder feat. It was the super weapon was more defensible, less vulnerable, more devastating, but it was harder to actually use it. And I wish they'd kind of drawn that out of a very temporary solution to, but no, they went for the full-on 3 guys land on the planet, 2 guys and a Wookiee, and they managed to take down the entire planet and turn it into a star. I was just kind of like, oh man, at least like that. And that, I think that's what bothers me, is it's like in every other super weapon case, there was always like, I don't know, it was too easy. It was too easy to destroy the star. And this is my problem. I think I went in like knowing too much, and I'm the kind of guy where you can't tell me anything without me knowing too much. And because I'm a big believer that good storytelling in a movie is predictable, in that there's only a certain number of outcomes and they're very well laid out when you get to that moment, and you know what your options are. And so if you know any detail about that prediction, then the rest sort of like falls out naturally. And so for the example, again, if I know we've already spoiled like big chunks of the end, but I'm just going for broke here. So as Han is standing on the walkway, and he's sitting there and going, like, it's this really well done, powerful, emotional scene, well acted, well performed. But like, this is the crux of the thing: is what's going to happen here. Hans puts himself in this incredibly vulnerable situation, and you as the watcher viewer is supposed to be thinking, oh my god, this is so dangerous. How is he going to survive this? How is he going to get out of here? Kylo Ren can't turn good right now, so he's got to get away. How is he going to get away? How is that going to happen? And then all of a sudden, he's just supposed to be, but you were supposed to have that angst of not understanding how he would get away, so the moment that he doesn't, it actually makes sense. Well, so this is the problem. If you were told, oh, I'm not going to, Jar Jar Binks dies in the movie. Oh, just kidding. It's not a spoiler. Jar Jar's not even in it. You're like, yeah, but you just told me somebody dies. Somebody significant dies. I now know that's what I'm watching for. So I'm watching that entire scene and can't relax because I'm like, okay, so how are they going to do it? I'm like breaking it down. I'm not just letting it like the emotion of it roll over me as like an audience member should. And I think there was a couple.
That's interesting. The second he hesitated and started walking over to him, I went, oh, he's done.
Oh yeah,
this is it. I mean, there was no tension for me. It was, and I mean, and the second he pulled out the lightsaber, like, yeah, okay, that's how he's going down. Got it. He's just gonna turn it on right into him.
Yeah.
And the fact that they both grabbed onto it, I was like, all right, that's a little weird. Like maybe there's some tension here. I don't know. But I mean, like for me, there was no doubt. And it was more like the sadness of knowing what was coming. Like, because he was in the movie a lot. I mean, it was Han's, they should have renamed it, right? Star Wars, Han Solo Swan Song.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was Obi-Wan for this one, just to really hit home the fact that
yes,
4 again.
Yeah.
It's like the exact same character, just without all the Force stuff.
He knows all about it. It's all true.
I know.
Yeah.
I will say there were a couple of moments that get me really excited about the next two. In particular, that opening sequence when what's his name, the pilot,
Poe.
When Poe fires his blaster and Kylo Ren stops it, and you're like, oh my gosh. Because you saw Vader like absorb a blaster in episode 5, right? So it's not like that's crazy, but just it hanging there in space was like, oh my gosh, I don't know why this is so much more intense, but this is so much more intense.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no, I thought that was cool. I also, though, there was a lot that I'm just like, I don't understand, or I don't know. There's a lot of gaps here.
Let me
know.
The
old man, you're like, okay, who's that?
He's just some random character. No, don't worry about it.
Like,
they wrote a comic book about it you're supposed to read, and then they'll make a TV series that ties him in. They got a whole backstory. They're doing that. They're doing a TV
series. That's what I was telling Jesse. I was like, yeah, we maybe got to get our hands on that and watch the TV series. I hear it's not good and not worth your time.
Oh yeah. Well,
apparently now it is.
Well, I guess what my point is that they're going to give it the Marvel treatment, where there's going to be a lot of seemingly significant characters that seem like they have some sort of a backstory, and you never learn anything about them other than their name, and that's because they're going to do an entire, other thing, another form of media outside the movies where this character gets a lot of backstory.
Which, is Rogue One, is that going to be about Poe? Is that?
No, that is, I think, well, so it's about the Rogue Squadron is what we know. And so there's a good chance that Poe will be in it, but won't be the leader yet.
Who, by the way, is an awesome pilot for the record. I was watching that opening scene and just like Finn, I was like, oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, he's really getting after it.
Yeah. I will say like the Millennium Falcon chase scene was amazing.
That was good.
That was so good. That was I love the space fighter style like chase sequences. Those are the highlights to me of most of the movies are, and I was just like nailed it. I thought to me the best lightsaber fight of all of the movies was episode 6, Vader versus Luke, because it's not technically impressive like episode 1 or episode 3, but it is emotionally grueling. And I've always preferred, even though like the Darth Maul fun is a lot of fun to watch, I find the episode 6 duel to be better. It just gets me going like tingly and just I'm gonna tear my hair out. I know exactly how it ends.
Last night.
It's so good. and I felt like the Kylo Ren duel in this one was way more a return to form of episode 6, where it was much more about the individuals involved and their emotional state. That had a lot more to do with their ability to fight than anything else.
I did notice that, which I thought was interesting. It was hard not to feel like a couple kids fighting.
Yeah.
And you're just like, huh. And it was funny, like Jessie afterwards. So Jessie, her expectation was that it was going to be like Han, Luke, and Leia going on an adventure again.
Really?
So she was already out of the gate like, well, what the heck is this? and I was like, what'd you think it was? And so she was just instantly like, kids that don't even care about fighting. Great. Like, whoa. And she's like, she was like, yeah, it's just a reboot, whatever. Like, oh, but it's a well done reboot. I mean,
yeah, but it's like the whole thing. It's more story. Like,
yeah. I'm like, you can't just. I get it, but no, you got to move on. And so it was. Yeah, she was just like, wow, whatever. But then at the end, she was like, just like little kids, whatever, just fighting. She's like, it makes me feel old.
That's pretty funny. Well, and I think what I liked about it was one of the things. By the way, I've got an eggnog mug.
Oh, look at that. Stormtrooper. Okay, which that's my other question. Like, so a stormtrooper is not a clone trooper?
No.
Somehow different?
Yes. So what the deal was, and you know what's really funny? This is like the 6th time I've explained this just since Thursday. So basically what happened was they decided they want Palpatine and his master wanted to stage a war.
Palpatine and his master.
Yes. Darth Tyrannus.
Is that the big dude that's the
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know.
Because that's another one I'm like, who's that guy? Apparently he's bad.
So Darth Tyrannus
in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Darth Tyrannus and Palpatine wanted to stage a galactic scale war so they could seize power.
Wait. So Tyrannus is not. That was not Dooku.
No.
Because in the cartoons, it makes it sound like Dooku. That's another name that Dooku goes by.
Really?
Yeah, which is why I got all confused because I'm like, I thought Darth Tyrannus. They referred to him a couple times as that, or, all right.
You know what? Go to Wikipedia, and it is Count Dooku is Darth Tyrannus. So, well, whatever. Okay, that's besides the point. The effectively Palpatine and his master wanted to stage a galactic scale war. So they got together a small group of really, really wealthy individuals to build a mechanized army because they didn't have the resources to get the people involved, and then thus gave birth to the Trade Federation Droid Army. And they used that to try to secure more power outside of the Republic. Then, in response, as that was all going on, they built a much more sophisticated and dangerous army that was the Clone Army. And the idea behind the Clone Army was they knew they only had about 10 years, so they had to really do it as quick as possible. So they got the coolest, baddest guy that they could find in the galaxy, which was Boba Fett. Well, yeah, okay. Same guy, literally. And in order to accelerate the process, in order to do it all in 10 years, what they did was they gave the clone troopers 2x growth rates. So in the 10 years before episode 2, they were building this army, and they had a couple of generations of armies of soldiers going. But when the movie starts, the soldiers are at their peak. They're finally ready to start fighting at 20 years old.
But and they're going to be twice as fast.
Right, exactly. So in the 5 years between episode 2 and 3, they are 30.
Not everyone's as spry in their 30s.
Exactly. I will be.
Yeah.
And then in the 20 years from episode 3, 20 years from episode 3 to episode 4, they would have gone from 30 to 70. And so the clone army was unsustainable as an army. But they were able to use the clone army in the first couple of years to exert their will and start academies, start abducting slaves, start recruiting people, because they basically have two mechanisms for getting recruits. One are people like Luke, who wanted to go to the academy electively, and two are people like Finn, who were abducted. And so the entire Death Star was populated with just your average guys who joined the army when Luke Skywalker murdered them in one of the worst cases of genocide in fiction.
Gotcha. Nice.
And then of course killed more technically, but
all right. And then and what's the First Reich, or wait, what's the name of the bad guys again?
First Order.
First Order. That's it.
And it's funny. I really liked Kylo Ren as a character. I liked how he
Jesse
just
hated him.
Really?
Which I was like, then that's a good thing. She's like, no. Like, she's like, not a good thing.
Well,
Just a whiny little brat.
yeah, that's what I kind of liked about it. Well, so one of the things that I like about it is using the lightsaber and the lightsaber duels as a metaphor for the type of character they are. So
I
it's
noticed
like
that, yeah.
So the big question everybody had is, why is this lightsaber all like flickery? Well, the answer is he is unfocused, undisciplined, but he's got a tremendous amount of raw power. And that's what his lightsaber is.
Stop a blaster in mid-flight.
Exactly. But he doesn't have the power to overcome somebody who's just your average Jedi. I guess she's not an average Jedi, but like
we don't really know. She seems to be powerful,
she seems pretty
untrained,
good,
and can learn on her own by just observing.
She can. Yeah, I know. She can even beat Daniel Craig in a Force Off, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, that's right. That stormtrooper that she Jedi mind tricks
was that Daniel Craig?
Yeah,
that's awesome. How? That's awesome. Just
he wanted to be in the movie, so they put him in the movie.
Man, I wish I was a superstar so I could do that.
There were a couple of guys that were in it, like Simon Pegg is in it as one of the creatures in a costume.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's friends with J.J. Abrams. He's been in quite a few of his movies.
Yeah, they're but that was yeah.
That's funny. Oh man, I totally want. Like I said, I want to go back and rewatch it because A, I was front row, but B, just things like that. Just like it's a fun movie.
Okay. Me wanting to be critical, like that part of me is like it's all ramped up, and I'm trying to beat that part of me down because it was very enjoyable. It was really it's fun. I will probably watch it more than once more. I'm definitely excited about the next ones.
Me too.
I think what I'm hoping
is JJ going to keep going?
No, they've already got 2 other directors.
It's ridiculous. What's the problem?
Well, I like it. It gives everything a little bit of a different flavor. That's they've accredited the success of the Mission Impossibles as like one of the big things that they changed that has gone over really well is different directors, as everyone has just a tiny bit of a different flavor. And even though there's like one,
I guess the original, the first 3 Star Wars were all different directors, right?
Exactly.
And then the prequels, not so much.
Yeah. So the only problem that I'm worried about is I don't know who's in charge of the story. Like,
at least like with Marvel, they've got that Federini guy, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that's definitely Apple, but yeah.
Right, it starts with an F.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I do because the guy who wrote The Force Awakens happens to be the guy who is writing the Han Solo prequel. He also happens to be the guy who wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, and happened to be the guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So he makes these movies good, and he has stated that the last movie he's going to write, like ever, he's retiring after the Han Solo movie.
Huh.
So
wait, how are they going to do a Han Solo prequel?
It's going to happen between episode 3 and 4. It will technically be episode 3.5.
Between 3 and 4. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess what I was thinking to CGI the entire thing, or
no, they're getting a new character.
What?
They've been casting it for months and months and months. It's one of the biggest casting calls ever.
Who's the guy who did Firefly? I hope they choose him. I feel like
they want to go for someone young. They want to go for someone.
Yeah, he's not young.
They want like a teenager.
Ugh.
He was in his 20s when episode 4 starts. So it's like, how does he get the Falcon? How does he meet Chewie? How does he? And I think what they're gonna do is they're gonna have the main villain be Boba Fett, so they can kind of give Boba Fett and just really, because there's nothing that says in any of the rest of the canon that says that they can't know each other already.
I thought Boba Fett comes back. I remember that being a rumor at one point in time. I don't remember him in the movie.
In episode
7.
No, okay. I think technically I think anything that suggests that Boba Fett survived the Sarlacc pit was rejected from canon or was not is
Oh,
not
okay.
part of canon anymore. So we don't know if he lived or not. But I think what they want to do is they look at that as like a good time to like really bolster his character too, and let the two of them become cool and in their own right to sort of, and
They're
then
not already.
say,
I feel like you just have a risk there because they're already pretty cool.
But yeah, it could, but it's Disney. They're making sure they don't. It's the guy who wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, Empire Strikes Back,
I guess it'll
Return
be
of
good.
the Jedi. I can't like if there's anybody who knows what that character's supposed to be, it's him. And now how do you get somebody that has the same like delivery and character of
And finger point?
Ford? Yeah.
We're walking into it. Jesse's like, I bet you he finger points at one point at some time in the movie. And it was just like almost right away.
Yeah.
She's like, told you.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
I don't know. But yeah, I'd say it was good. I liked it.
Cool. Me too.
I'll buy it. Probably.
I'll watch it again.
Definitely. I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
I think to make this ever so slightly more I don't even know what the right way to say this is, but clearly Disney's getting a good ROI from this little acquisition. They're definitely on a roll. There was a cool article from The Economist. Title is "The Force is Strong in This Film." Very true. And there was maybe two things that I thought were really interesting. So they were talking about how Disney actually was able to acquire Star Wars. And, so essentially Disney's whole strategy is we're going to create a movie and then we create all sorts of stuff around it.
Right.
I mean, that was like Walt's original strategy outlined on a piece of paper that has been copied multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And so Disney's whole strategy is, well, let's find franchises, movies that are doing well, or at least, franchises with very strong characters with good stories. And then we'll make those stories and tie it into everything that we do, which is what we're seeing with Star Wars. We've also seen that happen with all the Pixar stuff, and we're seeing that happen with all the Marvel stuff right now. It's kind of like those are three huge bets that Iger has made. What I thought was interesting is, number one, Small World. The deal was mostly made possible by Mr. Jobs. Played a role in this, right? Surprise, surprise. Because Jobs bought Pixar from George Lucas in 1986, and so the two of them knew each other. And then he was able to watch Lucas was able to watch Jobs' experience with Pixar and Disney.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he was like, okay, I know what that is. I know how it was handled with him. He saw, plus he also had experience working with Disney on the theme park attractions. Right. And so there was, a little bit of like trust there. The other thing, and I really like this paragraph, is that Mr. Iger had demonstrated his sensitivity to Mr. Lucas more than 20 years before, when as an executive at ABC, he approved a second series of Lucasfilm's Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, despite poor ratings in the first season. Mr. Iger felt Mr. Lucas had lived up to his commitments to make a high-quality show and deserved the opportunity. So when he broached the idea of buying Lucasfilm in 2011, Mr. Lucas told him he had not forgotten his kindness. And Mr. Lucas was the founder and sole owner, had never considered selling to anyone else before. And so just one of those like, be nice to everybody types of things 20 years later bearing fruit. And, and heck, even with like, he made that sale in 1986. That took until 2011 for that conversation to get started. So it's been in some ways a very long thing in the making.
That's
super
crazy.
The other interesting thing is the very last paragraph in this article says Mr. Iger is due to step down in 2018. So can he stuff more into the toy box before he goes? Mr. Iger keeps a list of firms Disney might be interested in buying. They are all leading international brands that would fit Disney well. For an
Sony.
example, the Lego Group, a privately held Danish firm, already does business with the company, licensing products, including Star Wars, and placing shops at Disney's theme parks. It would make an obvious target for the firm that has already bought up so many other pieces of your childhood. Which people pointed out, they're like, yeah, but you got 3D printing and other stuff, which I'm like, Disney doesn't care. That they could get into the 3D printing, scaling schematics and whatever. But just to kind of like, oh man, what else could he go after?
Man, that is interesting. That is interesting. Oh, jeez. Yeah. By the way, I was thinking about it a little bit, and I didn't think about it till after going to the movie, but in praise of Force Awakens, and to kind of point out how badly it could have gone, I don't want to direct your attention to any of the prequels. I'd rather draw your attention to Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Yeah, because it's the same crew, kind of. It's not Han. What's his name?
Yeah,
he's got a real name. But it's like it just
call him Ford.
Yeah, Ford. There we go.
Solo. Don't call me Solo.
Yeah. That's good. It's good stuff. Yeah, and actually to talking about that ROI, yeah, they are they beat their goal was to beat what's it called? They wanted to have number 1 and number 2 opening weekends for 2015. They wanted Avengers Age of Ultron to be number 2 and Star Wars to be number 1, but Age of Ultron was beaten by The Lost World, and that was quite the scar to their pride. So they went for broke with Star Wars, and yeah, they it looks like they're pulling it in. I think they said they were aiming for 250 million domestically opening weekend. It looks like they're going to hit about 240, but it's going to be 30. I mean, 30 more than
that are not in China yet.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that actually doesn't happen until January 7th.
What?
So, I don't know how the math works, but yeah, they're missing about 1 billion people in that math there.
Oh my gosh, because they've already made
have an opportunity to see it yet.
This weekend, they've made $500 million on this movie.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
People are like, at one time, people were talking like, oh yeah, 1.5 billion. That's what we're going for. And now people are like, can I get a 2?
Yeah.
And remember, they paid, now granted, they have expenses related to this, but they paid $4.1 billion for the Star Wars franchise. And I think they said they've already done like $5 billion just in merchandising sales.
I believe it. Oh yeah, and that's the crazy part to me is that doesn't include the video games and the merchandising and the theme park they're going to build and everything else. Yeah, like you said, that is just oh my gosh.
And it's just the revenue. I get it. There are expenses related to that, and who knows what the margins are, but they're probably fine.
Yeah.
No, they're going to be fine. It was a crazy steal.
It's crazy. That's just.
Which, did you know that they bought Pixar for like $7 billion?
Yeah.
That's a jobs negotiation right there.
Right. And it was mostly in stock. That's why Jobs was the largest. Okay. Yeah, he was the largest shareholder of Apple, or not Apple. Yeah, but also Pixar, not Pixar. I got this. Disney.
Third time's a charm. Yeah, they actually did say that part of it was like Jobs did go and talk to Lucas, and they're like, because he had a vested interest. He was the largest shareholder. He wanted it to. He would want it to work out.
Right. Yeah. And the last thing we want to talk about Star Wars before we start the show is you got to watch this YouTube video. The bad lip reading did one of Star Wars.
I have not watched that yet, but
it is awesome. Yeah. So I didn't realize it till I was like halfway through. But it's like, I recognize these voices. It's Bill Hader, Jack Black, Rudolph. What's her name? Oh man, I remember her first name all of a sudden.
I don't know who you're talking about. That's pretty good, huh?
Maya Rudolph. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, which are all like, yeah, they're all very funny people. It's very well done. And
I'll have to watch that.
yeah, it's definitely worth the time.
Excellent.
But you know what, James? We're not here to talk about Star Wars.
Hour in.
You know what, James? This week, this is an interesting because this is like the last week of serious news that we'll do for the year. Next week we'll do our post-dictions where we review the year and our predictions from the beginning of the year for this year. And
next week's show is going to be live in California too.
Oh baby! And then the week after that, we'll do our predictions for 2016. But this week, like every week, we will be talking about technology and the continuing corporate opera. And by that we mean, of course, the soap opera of corporations' dealings back and forth, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course, the technology they're developing. But before we get into the heart of the show, James has got a short disclosure he wants to throw our way.
Yes, I founded and work for Hewlett-Packard Inc., but I do not represent HPI or any of HPI's opinions. I also own part of Twitter and Etsy. I wish I owned part of Disney.
All right. The stock market is doing terrible.
Or Fandango, for that matter.
All right. Yeah, jeez. Come on, we want our advertising revenue. Stock market's doing terribly, but in case you were wondering, I am a significant shareholder of Facebook, Microsoft, Yahoo, Box, eBay, Twitter, Applied Materials, Skull Candy, Intel Corporation, PayPal, and GoPro. But yeah, if you want to follow us throughout the week, we're all up on the social media posting pictures of stuff like going to the movies. Yeah. And if you want to follow us, my Instagram is nextwiggin4, NEXTWIGGIN, the number 4. And my Twitter is at Matthew D. Furlo.
I am James Furlo at twitter.com on Foursquare, where I checked into the movie theater. Yeah.
You checked in at Foursquare. We talked about it last week. So yeah.
Technically is Swarm, I think is the name of the app now, but
yeah. I
think I meant to say May and I wrote my because I'm an idiot. I was like, "My the force be with my front row seat."
If you want to know more about the show, everything that we do this week, all the videos, links to all the articles, so like the bad lip reading video and any of these other stuff, it's all going to be there for your perusal at furlobros.com. Also, all the links to the podcast and the YouTube video. If you want to see my eggnog cup with the Stormtrooper, or if you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter. I'm going to try to get
you to take a picture of it. We'll make that the photo for the show.
All right, I got it.
See if we can make that happen. That seems appropriate. You can do that after the show, but I can see like, where's my camera? I'm doing this.
That was literally what I was doing.
We'll remember.
But I'll stop now.
A Star Wars related title of some sort.
Right. So
we just title it Han Dies. Just
James, now you got to skip all the way to this point in the podcast.
Totally forgot. What minute are we at right now? All right.
Yes. That was my favorite look. That look was great. Just don't even listen to the episode if you haven't seen it yet. Stop.
Done.
Go watch it. Oh man. Anyways,
I gotta remember that. I just forgot. I was still in the mode.
I know. I understand. So this week, this is hard to transition. So if you really, you know what? I
feel so bad right now. I mean, I guess I can edit it afterwards.
Right. If you got done with Star Wars and it got you really excited about cool acrobatic space flight and you want to do that for yourself, well, then I can have a suggestion for you. Go buy a drone. You can do that sort of thing. But the deal is they've been threatening registration because you can kill people with these flying robots. And the FCC, FAA, whoever it is, FAA, they a couple weeks ago we were talking about what that's going to look like, how big it's drones over a certain size, it's like half a pound, are need to be registered, and that registration process
It really
is
doesn't seem very heavy to me, but
right. Well, they just
it
they
doesn't have to be. It's got
exactly.
propellers.
It has to be moving fast, momentum.
Hmm.
It's not, as they like to say,
How
it's
much
not
is it? Oh, it's reasonably
it's
priced.
$5.
That's good.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't know this, but the that was a really high pitched squeak. Um, I didn't know this, but I guess registering to be a pilot is actually the same cost. There are a lot of other costs involved in being a pilot that make it,
Like flying airplane pilot.
yeah, that make it much more
Weird.
expensive, and like getting certified and doing everything and all of that process. But the actual
Insurance.
fee to register is only $5,
Hmm.
which is why the fee to register for drones is only $5. But it also tells you where we could be going as drones become more sophisticated and bigger.
I wonder if
And
you can register as a pilot without any of the other expenses. Because it'd be kind of fun to be like, yeah, I'm a registered pilot.
probably, I don't
Oh
know.
no, I can't fly, but
You know, I don't. I've never trained for a minute in my life.
I don't have my license or
Yeah,
anything.
don't give me
I'm
don't
just,
give,
I'm just
don't give me the
registered.
keys. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. But yeah, so it's $5. You do it online. They'll immediately give you a registration number that you have to put on the drone somewhere,
Huh.
and indelibly marked and easily legible. The idea there being, if it falls out of the sky and kills somebody, they can find it. They can trace it back to you. It's all like gun ownership, and in that idea that it just makes you liable for anything that happens with your drone.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so which is perfect. That's the right first step in this process. But we say all this to say, if you're getting a drone for Christmas, don't forget to get it registered, because the fines are going to be insane, like tens of thousands of dollars for having an unregistered drone. And they make it incredibly easy and cheap. So, word to the wise, register your drones. But
Good PSA.
yeah,
Cool, man. Cool.
it is cool.
So there's an interesting article this week by Bloomberg. Apparently, there's a boy genius out there who has built a self-driving car
Yeah,
in his garage on his own.
that's hard to believe, frankly.
I know. So the article does a good job of talking about George Hotz, Hotz, I'm gonna go with Hotz because HOT would be hot, and then Hotz. Anyways, 26-year-old. So take that.
Yeah, tell me about yourself.
Already. He's in San Francisco. So let's see here. How do I make sure? So as a 17-year-old, he was the first person to hack Apple's iPhone, allowing anyone with a soldering iron and some software smarts to use the iPhone on any network they wanted. He also later became the first person to run through a gauntlet of hardcore defense systems in the Sony PlayStation 3 and crack that open too. And
Wait. Yeah. What was it? What did you say? Sorry, I zoned out there for a second.
yeah, no problem. So he also cracked the Sony's PlayStation 3.
Right. Gotcha.
And
Okay.
made that open for people. Eventually, he went to court, and they agreed to. Sounded like they agreed to pay him some money to just not do that again. And actually, for a lot of years, he was just like didn't really have a job, wasn't really interested in stuff, and he would earn money by going to like hackathon contests that were like try to break our stuff and we'll give you money. And so he's just to go and just win, and that was like how he paid for his lifestyle. I mean, we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars of.
Yeah, some of those bounties for bugs go up into can be up to $1 million.
Yeah, and because one of them, it was like, I forget how much it was. Oh, here we go. I love this one. So let's see here. Let's see here. He produced an application called Towel Root, which gave Android users complete control over their smartphones. The software is free to download, been used over 50 million times. He kept himself entertained and solvent by entering contests to find security holes in popular software and hardware. In one competition, Podium, he broke into a Chromebook laptop and took home $150,000. He scored another $50,000 at Pwn to Own by discovering a Firefox browser bug in just one day. And at a contest in Korea designed for teams of 4, Hots entered solo, placed first, and won $30,000.
So it's pretty good, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
right.
Let's see here. By 2012, he was bored with the contest and decided to dive into a new field, AI. So he enrolled at Carnegie Mellon University.
What does the A stand for? Yeah.
And attended trying to get a PhD. But when not attending classes, he consumed every major AI research paper and still had time for some fun. At one point, the virtual reality company Oculus Rift failed to man its booth at a job fair. And so he took it over, posing as a recruiter and collected resumes from his fellow students. Yeah. He did 2 semesters and got a 4.0 in their hardest classes. He said he met master students who were miserable and grinding away so that one day they might earn a bit more at Google, and was shocked at what he saw and what college had become. And so he said the smartest people he knew were in high school, and so he was let down by the whole college thing. And so ultimately, dropped out. I mean, yeah, I get that. This is a Goodwill Hunting right here is essentially what we're looking at. So he's very much gotten into the world of AI, and what he likes about artificial intelligence is that not a lot is known. And so he's like, for the first time, there's something where he goes, he does know everything there is to know about artificial intelligence because it's new enough, and he's read all the papers and is doing fine. So he did actually meet with Elon Musk for a while, actually got a job offer, a multi-million-dollar bonus, all that fun stuff, to help them replace Mobileye. And Hots was like, I appreciate the offer, but he's not looking for a job. He just wants to create cool stuff. So what's kind of fun about this guy is he seems to figure out how to do stuff, pretty he's a hacker, which I think is the appropriate title of this article here. So he went and bought a car for 30 grand and spent an additional 20 grand.
But he can make money like nothing, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. So he spent another 20 grand buying hardware and sensors and stuff to put onto the car, and has since been making, writing the software for a self-driving car. And so what's interesting about it is, they were talking about the days of the grand challenge, teams spent millions of dollars on this stuff. And they're just like, nowadays the technology is good enough. He spent 20 grand on those same sensors. Which,
if you don't know, that's an insane level of sensors to find. Right? I mean, those are some nice sensors.
Yeah. And so for him now, he's working on that deep learning, and it kind of goes into kind of how it works. And so one way that you can do AI is give it some rules, which isn't really artificial, but you could say, anytime you see something with 4 legs and a seat and a back, that's a chair. And then you could show it a picture, and the computer will tell you if it's a chair or not. It's that's one way in which you could do this. The other way, which is probably a better way, he argues, is to use the brute force technique, which is show it a million pictures of chairs and tell it every single time, this is a chair. And it goes, and eventually the computer will go, oh, I know what a chair is. And it will create its own associations that are probably actually better described than the way a human would. And so then you can show it any picture of a chair, whether it's got four legs, a chair, and a back seat or not, and it will probably be able to figure out that it's a chair or not. And so that's what he's doing with his car, where he's literally got cameras on it, and he's like, "Watch me drive." And so he goes around driving, which is kind of like, well, I hope you're a good driver. But he goes around driving, and the computer watches him, and then he's like, and eventually it will pick up enough data, and it will figure out, oh, this is how you drive. And it doesn't, and the computer doesn't necessarily think of it as driving. It's just, given the situation, this is what you do. Which, if you remember, we posted a video way back a while ago that was Super Mario playing, doing that exact same AI type of thing, where it was like, we just gave it one rule. It was like, well, you can move forward and you could jump, and the whole goal is to get to the end is what you do.
Yeah, it gave it the computer could read the raw output from the video stream,
right?
And it had a number of different functions that it could call, each one corresponding to a button, A, B, up, down, left, right. So basically all of the controls. And it was not told what it was looking at. It just saw a stream, and then the one thing it was given was a goal, and the goal was to have the score go up, and that raw score
to
be associated with where you were along the path. And
and I think they seeded it with a couple, like, I can't remember.
They've done it a couple of times, and you can actually do it without anything. So it starts just randomly pressing buttons, doing things that make it move forward, and eventually they actually found that it would do, like, it learned how to do moves that people didn't think were possible, where it would kill enemies from below. Because
that's right.
It would know exactly. It would basically be able to time it so that the part of the sprite that would pass over it, and then it would jump at the right exact moment to kill the bad guy. And people would be like, yeah, just insane moves that literally only a computer could do. One of the things. So this is what's fascinating.
He's doing that with a real car right now.
Yeah. So this is an interesting deal. Because to kind of go a little bit deeper, so Google uses a similar, the artificial intelligence is the vaguest word in the world. And in a lot of, it's actually not unfair to call any sort of automation artificial intelligence, no matter how simple it is. So to sort of narrow in on what type of artificial intelligence you're dealing with, you're talking specifically about machine learning, which is to say, we don't actually set the rules, we give you patterns. And there is a mathematic model that you can use that will slowly adjust over time to be able to recognize those patterns for the machine to recognize those patterns in a predictable way. This is actually how the human brain works, and you're probably watching your daughter do the exact same thing in a very accelerated pace every day. And one of the mathematic models that we use is called a neural network, which is similar to how the brain works. And it's neural nodes. You have specific nodes with connections, and each connection has a specific weight given what information's coming to it. And there's all sorts of crazy things you can do with neural networks, where you can have multiple levels and multiple nodes. And when Google uses their neural networks, their machine learning to do image processing, like he was talking about, what they do is there's a number of layers of node, each node being a different type of thing. So one of them is like edge detection. They figure out where the edges of things are so they can find this shape. And then they do color stuff, and so they can break an image into simpler components, so that all of those simpler components can be then fed into a smaller node, a smaller set of nodes, and then it can process from there. One great example of how neural networking works is you take a little grid that you can draw on either white or black pixels, and each pixel corresponds to a node in the network. And if you draw on it the number 9 and then tell it every time, hey, this is a 9, a huge data set, with variations in who wrote it and when they wrote it, it will recognize nines eventually, and you can actually teach it the entire language. Huge sets of pixels can be hard to do that with, so you want to give it smaller nodes. So the really interesting thing to me is the question of how many nodes is he giving it? Like, how is he getting it? You know, what's the input on that? And
yeah, good question.
how's it going? The cool part about this strategy and what's really fascinating about it is that there's a lot of technology that's coming out that is really going to help him along in this process. For example, NVIDIA we've talked about this before, selling their new hardware accelerated neural networks, because the mathematics to do the tuning process to have it learn are relatively slow because there can be so many nodes. But if you can do that in a hardware accelerated way, well, you can really speed that process up. And this is like the ideal situation for it, because one of the things that neural networks are remarkably good for is image processing, figuring out what you're looking at, and then based on that, then do something. And neural networks do image processing in a way that no other type of programming has ever really been close to coming up with, which is interesting for a whole lot of reasons, and some technological, some philosophical. And yeah, and then there's other stuff that's going on that's exciting about this, like, because the neural network tuning is what they call that, when the actual process of it learning is tuning the neural network. It's an optimization problem in calculus. What you're trying to do is you take a huge data set over time, and you're trying to find the best fit curve. And you do that by finding maximums and minimums, which is specifically what quantum computers are great at, in a way that is just like, and it's funny, there are
really,
yeah,
I don't know that.
Yeah, so there's it's one of those things where it's like, we could, you know, if Google really cracks the nut on these quantum computers, and you can have all of these things sort of kind of mesh together in a way that, I don't know, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty exciting. I love it. I love seeing it. You want to know what I want to do? I want to build an app that runs on a neural network. I do.
Oh,
and all it does is it says, I think, what did I want to say? It's you guess a number. You write in a number, and it will try to guess the number. And I think I want to give it, I don't even know what kind of a range, but just give it just like a random neural network pattern of different nodes and different levels of nodes and different connections, and try to tune a neural network to somebody, just a person putting in random numbers, and see how good it could get at getting close to the number that it thinks that you're going to guess, just based on the pattern. Like, I think that would be a really fun experiment to run. One of the best part about all this stuff is, like, these models are so complicated that it's impossible to really visualize what the data is. You can't look at any particular piece of it, because it's a giant network. Each piece is useless. It's only when it all works together that any information comes out of it. So it's really hard to know if there's any lurking quote unquote bugs in his program.
It was like, at one point in time, they were taking their second test drive or something like that, and the car did something, and he was like, that's interesting. I wonder why it did that. And he was like, honestly, I don't know. It's like, I obviously didn't teach it that, but it picked up that's how to do that. And so, it was just kind of like, I don't know. It's doing its own thing now.
Yeah, and one of the interesting parts about it is that if he doesn't follow the law precisely all the time, it will
totally, right?
It will learn to break the law when it drives. If you always go 10 miles over the speed limit, it will always go 10 miles over the speed limit.
Yep.
And that is something that Google is struggling with right now, because originally when they came out with their self-driving cars, they actually had them go 10 miles over the speed limit, up to 10 miles over the speed limit, because there was a big study that was done that says the most dangerous thing that you can do when driving isn't to speed, it's to be outside of the normal range of
Oh, interesting.
of driving, of flow of the traffic. And so what they argued was if everybody's going 70, it is, and they've proven this statistically, if everybody is going 70, it is as dangerous to go 60 as it is to go 80. 10 miles over the speed limit is just as dangerous as 10 miles under. So if everybody goes 75, which is pretty normal on a freeway with a speed limit of 65, and your car goes 65, it will cause more accidents. It's more likely to cause an issue. And when people found out that they were programmed to break the law, that didn't go over well. So Google had to reprogram their cars to not break the law. And as a result, they're having way higher than normal incidents of car accidents, which is completely predictable and statistically
understandable. I'm sure engineers were just ticked about it when they were asked to do it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because it's and now there's this big, back in the, now everybody's asking, should Google program their cars to break the law? Of course. Have them.
Well, I wanted to make the argument though that it's a temporary problem until majority of cars are autonomous, and then it'll go away.
This is the interesting thing, and I agree with you on this. But what they did is they,
of course, then they'd all go to the speed limit naturally, right? They'd all progress back to the mean because it's biased towards wanting to go to the speed limit.
Exactly. What I was going to say is what's frustrating here is that it's designed to. They're programming it to obey the rules. He's programming it to be safe. The pattern that it's following is how it's learning is how to interact with a bunch of other objects that follow arbitrary rules. And his car is effectively learning that same thing. What are the arbitrary rules that I need to learn in order to emulate that pattern? And the pattern that most of us drive under is be safe first, which includes braking when you shouldn't or accelerating when you shouldn't, unless you're an idiot on an on-ramp, and I hate you. But and it's a conflict that Google runs into that he is not constrained to. Yeah. And I would, yeah.
I mean, that was my, and I actually have thoughts around this.
Talk to me.
Two of them. So one of them is going to try to take us a little bit off track, and then it'll bring it back. So the first one is, so this guy, like, he's got a vision, and so he started the autonomous car work, and he sees it really as step one in the AI revolution. Yeah, because transportation's a place where it have a massive impact, and then he wants to take his technology to the retail and help build systems that provide flawless self-checkout at stores. Yeah. And then he is talking about how he wants to look into nuclear power and things like that. Like he says this last thing, there's a chance that AI might kill us all. But what we know is that if you're on the side of technology, if you're on the other side of technology, you lose. Betting on technology is always the correct bet, which I think is interesting. So he's clearly got a vision for where he wants to go with this, and he wants to, really make some change. But here's what I find super interesting. I'm trying to figure out the best way to set this up. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Blink, and in it he talks about how people make snap judgments, essentially, in a blink type of thing, and he found some correlations between, or I don't want to say it. One of his things he wrote about in the book is that it's not just about how good you are. It's about how you get there as well and your attitude towards it. Mm-hmm. So as an example, let me show you. They found they were looking at malpractice suits for doctors. And the prevailing assumption is bad doctors have more malpractice lawsuits against them. Right?
Right.
Seems like a reasonable assumption. The answer is wrong. That is not actually who has it. It is the most highly correlated with bedside manners. And it's kind of like once you say it, you go, oh, yeah, you're totally right. So what they found was that, if you're super nice and the patients love you, you can make a lot of boneheaded mistakes and they'll forgive you. If you're not nice, even if you're 100% correct, and if you're delivering bad news or something bad happens and you were like, you did the best thing, you were technically perfect. Right. If they don't like you, they'll sue you anyways, because you don't have good bedside manners. And so hospitals are more focused now on improving bedside manners than on proving doctor skills.
That's fascinating.
And so, yeah, totally right. And then he also compared two academics, one of which like wasn't as like, so one guy super ridiculously smart, had a ton of white papers and brilliant ideas that none of which were being implemented, and no one was working with him. And then he compared him with another guy who wasn't as smart, but pretty smart, who virtually got away with murder because he was able to sweet talk himself his way out of it. And, which are just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I think a more relevant pair of duo for our podcast might be Edison and Tesla. Right? I think most people would agree that Tesla was the smarter of the two.
Yeah.
But also not exactly the guy who got along with people.
Right.
Best. And so as a result, brilliant idea or brilliant person who, made contributions to the world, but I would argue not as big of contributions as Edison, at least in the short to mid-term.
Right.
Long term that may be debatable, but he struggled, and whereas Edison did not. And I wonder about this guy. He seems very much to be flying El Solo Mio, and a lot of these companies, like with Edison, you don't get there on your own. You get there with others. And here's what makes me think like he might be in a little bit of trouble, where his car will probably be, honestly, technically, it will probably be the best from just a pure, raw, figured out standpoint.
And more importantly, is what we will do eventually. How he's doing it is the way to do it.
Yes, you're probably right. However, Tesla made a couple corrections to the article after they read it and published it on their site, because in it he made it really sound like he had met with Elon Musk, and all he had to do was prove his technology, which he was going to do by like beating Tesla's current car driving on a stretch of highway, because he had talked with Elon Musk about it. And so he made it sound like in this article, like, oh yeah, all I gotta do, once I get good enough, Tesla's on board, and we're gonna make it, it's gonna be awesome. So Tesla says his article did not correctly represent Tesla or the competing product, which is Mobileye. It says, we think it is extremely unlikely that a single person or even a small company that lacks intensive engineering validation capability will be able to produce an autonomous driving system that can be deployed to production vehicles. It may work as a limited demo on a known stretch of road. Tesla had such a system 2 years ago, but then requires enormous resources to debug over millions of miles of widely differing roads. The true problem of autonomy, getting a machine learning system to be 99% correct, is relatively easy. But getting it to be 99.9999, that's 4 decimal places.
Yeah.
Correct. Which is where it ultimately needs to be, is vastly more difficult. One can see with this annual machine vision competitions where the computer will probably identify something as a dog, blah, 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 blah. So essentially they're saying, no, we're probably not going to work with this guy. He's managed to tick us off. I mean, Elon Musk offered him a job, said, hey, come work on my team. I'll give you millions of dollars. I see potential in you. From what I can tell, and Elon Musk is that kind of guy where he goes, nope, we're done. I don't care what your thing does. I'm not even going to look at the results. He strikes me as that kind of like,
no, James.
You know what I mean? I mean, James, I may be wrong.
James. You just called Elon Musk Edison. Don't do this to me.
No, well,
No, you did. You may not have done it on purpose, but you did. And that hurts my soul. Because as an engineer, a guy who likes technology and like creativity and that sort of stuff, I'm a dedicated Tesla fan. And in the war of Tesla versus Edison, I have chosen my side, and it makes me very uncomfortable that I like Steve Jobs when Steve Wozniak exists in the world, but at least they're going to die friends. But you can't do this. You can't have no. That's frustrating.
Well, if we're honest about it, from a success standpoint, from an impact on the world standpoint, again, short to medium term, Edison was better. I mean, General Electric, right? It has a huge impact on. Now again, long term, maybe that's different. I don't know.
I think it is a classic. I mean, it is actually very interesting to me, those parallels, because the Jobs Wozniak relationship.
One of them took the name.
Yeah. The Jobs Wozniak relation, where you've got the really smart engineer, creative, and then the one with a vision for the business. I think one of the interesting things is that if Tesla and Edison, they met at very different times in their lives. Tesla was a young engineer from a foreign country, and Edison was a successful business leader who had already made huge investments.
Boy, there are some parallels here, aren't there?
Yeah, and then he had already made some huge investments in direct current DC. And all of a sudden Tesla comes, and the whole trick was Tesla said, "Hey, I think I have a better way to do this." And said, "Hey, I want to build a new thing for you." He took one of the alternators from one of the generators from the General Electric, rewired it over the course of like a couple of months, came back, or like a couple of weeks, came back and showed it off to him and said, like, "See, this is so much better. This is amazing. You need," because one of the big problems with direct current is they require a tremendous amount of current, and they get really hot. So you have to use really thick copper wires, and you can't send it very far. So they're using tons of copper, and they had to build power stations every 2 miles. And all of a sudden, Tesla comes along with being able to use thin copper wires and with power stations way far away, delivering the same amount of power over those distance. So it was economically just made a lot more sense. But I think I get a feeling, and nobody's ever really written nobody's ever written just a fair, unbiased evaluation of what that was, as I have a feeling that Tesla came in and
wasn't super humble about it.
Yes, I would thank you for coming up. I was like, man, all of the terms that I would use are not safe for a podcast. He came in knowing that what he was doing was this young engineer who is about to radically change Edison's plan, and came in demanding a tremendous amount of money as a result. And Edison was like, no, I have a business. I run a business. We make money. This is a successful company. We bring important technology to people's lives. And one of the weird, there's so many cool stories about this. One of the weird byproducts of this was Tesla. Obviously, Edison held the patent for General Electric held the patent for the incandescent light bulb. Yeah. And all the patents involved, so like the twist-in light bulb, the actual threaded bulb, and how it was built and everything. And when Tesla won the contract to power the World's Fair over Edison, Edison was like, "Fine, whatever, you win. I'm not going to worry about it." And they were like, "Great." And then he said, "Oh, by the way, you can't use any of our light bulbs that we own the patents on." And so Tesla invented both the fluorescent light bulb and the same outlet that we use today for those dual prong fluorescent bulbs. He invented those too. And in the time from when they got to the contract to when they lit up the World's Fair.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a world of difference when you think about the skill level and the engineering prowess. It's insane. But Tesla could run a company, Edison could run a company that actually affected people's lives and got the products out there, and Tesla couldn't. And in the classic Steve Jobs artist ship, and basically what Elon Musk, to bring it back around, is saying is artist ship, that car will never be street legal. And even if it is, it will be embroiled in so many lawsuits because All it has to do is 1% and it's done. It's not good enough to be, you need to be better than anything you could possibly imagine. You have to be better than amazing, astounding, and great. And that takes a tremendous amount of time and energy and huge amounts of engineers.
Or even if it, just to validate it, right?
Just to validate
it may be amazing, but no one's going to believe them. They have to validate it first.
Exactly. And it's so, and it's just one of those things where it's in classic. And I think in time, just like with Tesla, where he was absolutely right in every one of his inventions. He was right about radio transmission of messages. He was right about AC power. He was right about light bulbs. He was right about so many different things, but Marconi got the Nobel Prize. General Electric is known for inventing the light bulb and selling the light bulb. And the fluorescent light bulb, we didn't flip over to the fluorescent light bulbs until we were legally required to. And that's, artistship. And it's not good enough to be the best. You have to have a deliverable product too. And I agree with you. He doesn't have a deliverable product.
Well, and my fear is he doesn't have the mentality to get a team around him to help,
right,
to pick up where he lacks, and because he's not perfect, and that was the great part about Jobs and Wozniak, which I think Wozniak was a people person. And I think that makes a fundamental difference. Like, he loves to make people laugh and he enjoys people. Whereas I get the sense that this guy, like, if he didn't see anybody for 2 months, he wouldn't think it was weird.
Yeah.
I was just busy, whatever.
Yeah.
And I get that sense, like that guy in the book Blank, like Gladwell had to drive out to some remote middle of nowhere place in order to talk to him. And like I said, there were white papers, just stacks. And this guy, he's like, these thoughts and ideas are amazing. Nobody in sight to share them with. And this guy is literally living in his garage, working on a car. And he's like, he doesn't talk to people, doesn't hang out with people.
Right. And that's
incredibly important when you're inventing. You can't do it in a vacuum. And that's what he's doing.
And any of our listeners that are like huge engineer fans, just science fans, you're probably really upset with us right now. But the thing is, and this is where I come back, is Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak held this shared vision of they wanted it to delight people. And right. in their own ways and in different ways, but they both had this shared vision and love of art and performance and social interaction. And when you lack that, it doesn't matter how great you are. You could literally come to Earth and say, I'm here to save all of humanity. There will be nothing but peace and gloriousness and heaven on earth. But if you don't ever talk to anybody and share that message, it gets lost. and you sit there and that's what this guy has got, is he's got the obvious end game solution. It's going to take 20 years for us to get to the point where you can validate that and trust that and really understand that and do that in aggressive and quick ways and replicate it and all of those things, even though that is unquestionably how we're going to do it. Like, I can't, if you don't believe me, you're wrong. I'm sorry. That's the solution. But ultimately, unless you have a giant team, it's harder to do. And it's harder to validate. And that's the really tricky part. It is very, very, very hard to make sure it did not pick up on a pattern that won't cause something to go wrong. Whereas with Tesla, it's easier because it's all systematic and there's a logic to the entire software structure. So bugs and errors can be fixed in a predictable and logical way, whereas it doesn't work like that. So validating it is completely different and much more difficult.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, here we go. This is interesting. Instead of hundreds of thousands of lines of code found in other self-driving vehicles, HOTS's software is based on about 2,000 lines.
Yep. Yeah, it's not surprising me at all, because it's you write one. If for anybody that,
Yeah,
oh
you're
man,
right. There's one rule.
I gotta
You just
make
loop it.
I gotta make my video. Basically, what happens is you treat each node and all of its connections as a single object in computer language. That, you know, it's this idea that like a chunk of code, and then you would create as many of those as you need, and you would store all of the connection weights are stored values, and so you can literally, yeah, it's a massively nested, recursive isn't the right word, but it's a giant data
Similar.
structure where all of the components are the same form with different values related to them, and therefore you're able to do with a very small amount of code, because it's the same form, you're able to make gigantic programs that require tremendous amounts of RAM and processing power, because they're so recursive. Yeah,
Which
and
we have nowadays.
right. And honestly, I'll bet each node is 100 lines of code. Like the actual neural network code that he's doing is about 100 lines. I'll bet the rest of the 1900 lines of code it's all software for
How to
controlling
drive.
gas,
Yeah.
controlling the gas pedal, the steering wheel, and the sensors. It's taking all of those things and bringing them together to the neural network, which is just a speck of code that you, and where, yeah, and that's my bet. That's my bet. Interesting. That's fascinating. That's really cool. The future. I can't wait. So I have no good segue. Did you know that chicks play video games?
Really?
Yes. I know it's a shocking idea. So I don't know why. This is just something that I've been thinking about lately, and kind of slowly adjusting my sails on. And one of the things that I've become a big advocate for in the last couple of years is this idea that, especially in a world where machine learning is barreling down on us, and the ability to understand how automation works becomes increasingly more important, and jobs will be more reliant on better levels of computer knowledge in the future. I've been a big advocate for pretty much every girl I know, family, friends. I'm like, you need to learn how to code, because there is a huge imbalance in how many women learn to code, and it's a cultural issue. There's not some fundamental difference between men and women that make men better at computer technology than women, and that is really obvious in like the first person to create a program 100 years before the invention of the computer, which is kind of a weird, but it was basically a mathematic proof for it. What's her name? I gotta get a name. Make sure. Yeah, Ada Lovelace, who she's crazy history. And yeah, she was a British mathematician and writer, and she was the first official programmer. She kind of she took a mathematical proof of a professor that she was working with, and brought it to its logical conclusion. And so she usually gets credit for being the first one to do that. And what's interesting about that, and the reason I bring it up, is because there's this kind of broader idea, I think, in our society that there are male-oriented activities and female-oriented activities, and one of them is that men play video games, men are gamers, and women aren't. And
yeah,
unless
it's Dr. Mario, and then my wife is a bigger gamer than I am.
Well, see, and that's what's really funny. Pew Research found that 49% of American adults, just shy of half the population, play video games with some regularity. However, how many Americans map gaming into men and women is one-sided. Fully 60% of Americans, including the men and women who play games, assume that gaming is a male activity. That assumption is reflected in who is considered...
Wait. Let me make sure I understand this. So 60%, so a little over half of people who play, I think that it's mostly
a male activity.
Okay.
Yeah. 15% of men surveyed considered themselves gamers, compared to just 6% of women, which I think is really interesting. That They're saying 50% of people play
Yeah.
regularly, but only 15% of men consider themselves gamers, and
Yeah.
only
See, I wonder if I
6% of
I
yeah,
fall into that weird category because I would not call myself a gamer. Though for the record, I did download the Star Wars Heroes game. I think
yeah,
that's what it's called. And I probably already spent a couple hours playing it.
that's pretty
It's Dungeons and Dragons Star Wars is what it is, and it's awesome.
really.
And yeah, it's super fun. Well, I mean, it's the battles, and it's all about. It's just turn based. It's really well done. The introduction takes forever, and that's where I was like, "Oh, I'm onto something here," because it's not straightforward. Uh,
That's what you know is
yeah,
good.
super fun game. But again, I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but I definitely like play.
You are you would be considered, well, you may not, well, I would say you play video games, you're not a gamer in whatever that means. I think part of it is
I'm
that
part of that. I'm part of that 49%, but I'm not part of the 15%, I guess. And mostly because I'm like, well, I don't own a console, but I play mobile games and not just the like. I mean, I do play Tetris, and yeah, I play games. I guess if I think about it, I'm like, oh, I guess I do play, but I don't think of myself that way. So I get it. I'm just saying I get the results. That's what I'm saying. Because you're
Yeah.
part of the 15%, aren't you?
I don't consider myself a gamer.
Seriously?
I don't play enough video games, which is weird.
That's an interesting thing.
I know.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'm bad at video games because I don't play them enough, and I've got a PlayStation. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. So, but this is what's really fascinating. So the
I
strategy.
wonder if that's a sign, right? Where you're just like, are you a gamer if you don't think you play enough? You know,
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, I probably play too much. But you're more like, I don't play enough.
To be a gamer? No.
Interesting. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, see, my problem is like the number one game for me that I play is just stupid and not well, yeah, basically, but right now it's Flow Free is my go-to.
Flow Free. What's that?
Oh, it's awesome. It's a fun game, man. It's just
it's
yeah, it's an iPhone game that you basically have a grid with a bunch of dots of different colors, and you want to connect the dots and fill up the grid. It's called Flow Free.
Okay.
It's cool. I'm obsessed with it. And
I'll check it out.
But and those are the sorts of games that I go, like simple puzzle games. And so in that capacity, I'm certainly a gamer. Yeah, so I think what's interesting here is the strategy, men ages 18 to 29 with 77% of respondents saying they play games, a full 33% identifying as gamers. That compares to 50% of women playing games and just 9% of female gamers in the same age group. And Pew also, I'll break this down. Pew also found that people's relationship with gaming changes as they age. 38% of women over the age of 50 play video games compared to 29% of men. So this is the idea.
Wow,
for under 30s, 77% of dudes play, 60% of women play, a third of men under 18 think themselves as gamers, whereas less than a tenth of women think themselves as gamers. So there's a big disparity between how much people are actually playing and how much they think they're playing. One of the biggest differentiation is this idea of core gamers, and we've talked about this before, in the capacity of like AAA games, things that you would see your hundreds of $1 million games, things that come out on PlayStation, Xbox, and big name games, stuff like that. And people who play first person shooters, Battlefield, whatever. And yeah, what am I trying to say? So the type of game changes, and I think that's what's important here is that everybody in this list aren't people who are playing PlayStation games. They're people like you and I playing smartphone games, playing apps, playing small puzzles, playing little things that are undeniably computer games. They're just not AAA titles, so you don't kind of fall into that culture. What's interesting is there are fewer people playing and you make less money. Like there's a ton, I may not be true. I don't want to be throwing out statistics that aren't entirely true, but But the idea
fine.
that
I do it all the time.
whatever, you know what, we're going for broke. You make less money. Like the mobile market is enormous. Like that is where the core of gaming is moving, and we've talked about that in months past, where it's not your giant, you know, it's not Grand Theft Auto 4, it's not Star Wars Battlefield, it's Candy Crush, it's Farmville. Those are the games that really can make a tremendous amount of money, especially when you add all of the different micro titles together. And what I think is most fascinating about this is the question of why. Why is there this discrepancy about what's going on there? And I'm going to make the argument that it is entirely cultural. Have you ever watched anything by, or any of the YouTube videos titled Adam Ruins Everything?
No.
So it was a guy who started working for College Humor, I believe, and he got picked. Yeah,
yes,
he got his show picked up by Real TV, and basically what he does is he gives you the inside scoop on what's going on behind the scenes, and it's just, I hate it because that's my gig. Like, my gig is supposed to be the know-it-all cynic, and like,
I watched one video of it and I didn't like it.
You know,
you're ruining it. I'm done.
When I first started watching them, I hated it for, I don't even know what it was. So I didn't like it when he was doing the ones that he did on for College Humor. I didn't love very much. The Real TV writers that he's gotten are way better, and the quality of the production quality's gone up, the writing's gone up, the sorts of things that he attacks are much more focused, and like, but he does one on Tom's shoes, tearing apart Tom's shoes, and the whole like that whole thing there. And I remember it's frustrating because it's like that whole like giving the third world people consumables. Like there's this really interesting dilemma around that he lays out quite nicely. But it's like, oh great, now everybody will be like, oh, so you watch Adam Ruins Everything also? Like, no, I thought about that back. Like, I learned about that the way that you're like, where you read books and like study like smart people, not watch really entertaining.
You just have to be like, what's Adam Ruins Everything?
Exactly. So anyways, I say that to give him as much advertising as possible because they're getting better. And he did do a really good one that I liked that, to be totally honest, had facts I didn't know. And kind of relates to this whole idea, but it's why is gaming a male-centric activity? And the reason behind that was, so originally when games when games started coming out in the 70s and 80s, and your like early platforms like the Atari, most of your early video games, there were as many females coding as males. Like it was kind of everybody was in on it. It wasn't really biased in a way, especially compared to the rest of the computer science, engineering field. It wasn't as biased it was less biased towards men. And then kind of after the Atari died down, popularity was going away. Nintendo was launching their first system called the Nintendo Entertainment System. And they decided that they were going to build their system and their titles for a particular niche so they could really focus on advertising to that niche and just focus their advertising. We're not going to we're not going to sell to everybody. We're going to get one small thing going. And so they started a marketing campaign back in the early 80s where they targeted 18 and younger boys, and they basically, you and I, they targeted our demographics. So they built games designed for us, and they had huge marketing campaigns designed for us. And it worked so well, it's crazy because the game system took off. And so when Sega came around with their system, and when Sony came around with their system, and when all of these different companies came around with their systems, they didn't even bother trying to find a different market. They're like, it's a great market, we're just going to fight with them. And it's one that, we talk about as a market matures, the first thing you do is you have to educate about the product in general. And that's what Nintendo did. They set this foundation, and they really drove this wedge between boys and girls about whether or not they'd like to play video games. And then as things sort of grew into the next phase, and it matured even further, it became, gaming was something that young boys do. It wasn't meant for adults. And then eventually we grew up, and a lot of us still play video games to some extent. And so it's much more acceptable for adult men to play video games than it was back in the 80s, because we just kind of took it with us. It makes sense. Like, it's not a young boy activity. Everybody has been playing games forever. Just because it's on a computer doesn't mean it should be built for just young men. Like, that, there's a disconnect in that logic, and I think it's fascinating because it's clearly changing slowly but surely.
It's kind of like Legos, right?
Yeah.
Where Lego suddenly discovered, like, oh, girls actually like this, and they don't want dumbed down Legos. They want the real thing.
Yeah, they don't want pink Legos. They want Harry Potter Legos.
Right. Well, they do like pink Legos, but it was like,
yes,
they would do them where they were like, they were like semi-assembled already, or like they were Legos light, like not Duplos, but like that.
Right.
And they're like, no, we want to build complicated stuff just like our male counterparts.
You see, you're absolutely right. They do have lines of pink Legos that sell very well, but most girls that buy Legos do not buy the pink princess Legos. They buy just regular old Legos. But it's what intellectual property is it tied with? Whereas boys tend to buy Star Wars Legos, girls tend to buy the Harry Potter Legos, and which, I don't know, kind of makes, I like it. It's, you know what that has, James? It has truthiness. It's that indescribable quality of, it feels right. I don't know. And it's funny. One of the things my girlfriend mentioned to me that she thought it would be fun to play more video games, and a couple of months ago. And I remember sort of rejecting that. Not rejecting it, but just thinking, not giving it the full weight of what she had said, because I've got
something. It's like clicking now.
What's clicking?
I don't know, your voice, your audio. Bummer.
Do I need to?
I don't know. Every time you talk now, it's all clicky and staticky. Weird.
Does that change it? What about, is that any better?
No, I feel like it's on my side.
It's definitely on your side then, because
let me try something.
Okay. This is really great radio.
It has to do with my, it's me. It's my side. Talk again.
Hi, you're listening to the Furlo Tech Podcast.
I don't know what to do about this. I guess I could just download it from YouTube. That hopefully will take care of the static.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so I for me, it was just, I had this interesting thought because I had thought, man, you know what I should get her? I should get her like the new Apple TV, and so she can play games, which might be the right move, but that was definitely me being like, I didn't even ask her, like, what kind of video games do you want to play? I just assumed, well, chicks don't play like real video games. So I've decided that I was like, I got to get her to play Destiny, because she might play it and think this is awful, but she might sit there and go, this is actually kind of fun. And, you know, and which I don't know. What am I trying to find the words for? It's not, there's nothing to do with this information. I don't think we need to go out and change the world immediately. It's just something to think about, as, yeah, this is definitely going on, and it's shifting, and we're going to move more and more in that direction as more and more money is made in mobile, because you're catering to the entire audience of interested parties, not just a small subset of people that don't actually have any money because they don't have jobs.
That is interesting. Huh.
Why do boy bands target 12-year-old girls? Because they have access to their parents' credit cards, and they are a hugely lucrative business. And I could see video game companies trying to figure out how to target that audience the struggle is how do you target that audience without being incredibly patronizing and cheesy? Because people don't respond well to that. But
yeah, you almost have to adopt the Home Depot Lowe's strategy where you're like, you're a hardware store. That doesn't change, but it's the way in which you act as a hardware store. You make it inviting to everybody.
right.
Somehow. I would argue, Nintendo figured that out with the Wii on how to attract a different audience. And
I agree.
I think you can do the same thing. Huh. All right. Cool beans, man. All right. This next segment is around a book that I've been reading. So I bought a book. I've been reading it. It's called 0 to 1. Okay. And it's a pretty interesting book. It's written by a VC. So, that kind of tells you the bent. I really liked this. He starts off first sentence, first chapter, like right out the gate here. He says, whenever I interview someone for a job, I like to ask this question: what important truth do very few people agree with you on?
I came locked and loaded. I already know mine.
Yeah, let me hear it.
That The Two Towers is the best of the three movies.
There you go.
I think it's undeniably better than Return of the King. I think any fair appraisal of those movies, it's not even a question. But despite the fact that it only got 3 Oscars and Return of the King got 13, but the challenge is Lord of the Rings.
Part of that, everybody knew Return of the King was coming, and so they stored it up.
That's what I'm saying. It got burnt by a lesser movie, but Fellowship of the Ring is the big one. Is it better than the Fellowship of the Ring? And I think yes, but only because and the difficulty is that that Fellowship was just such a new world, and it was so exciting because it was like, oh my gosh, we're seeing Lord of the Rings brought to life. This is such a big deal that it gets the bump from being the first from a nostalgia perspective. But I think the Two Towers with the Ents and the Helm's Deep is the best. It's the best one.
All right, fair enough. That's cool. So this guy, his is very different.
Okay.
It's an interesting one. He essentially says that monopolies are good. Which I would be like, yeah, that's not a very common held belief. And I thought that he was like, yeah, your goal, he says, is to create monopolies. And he's like, and competition is bad. I was like, okay. So he goes on to define monopoly. He goes, by monopoly, he means the kind of company that's so good at what it does that no other firm can offer a close substitute. Google is an example.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, the idea of 0 to 1 is the idea of no idea or there's nothing to one of those things. It says most companies focus on one to many, where there's already an existing idea out there and they go to copy it. It's
right.
Like that's not where the wealth is. And he talks about Microsoft and Yahoo a lot in that kind of realm. And then he says, if you want to create and capture lasting value, don't build an undifferentiated commodity business. And so, because we've actually made the comment on this podcast multiple times. Oh, competition's good. That's one of the reasons why we enjoy doing this, right? We're watching competition unfold. And and his whole thing is like, no. The problem with competition is that it always drives prices down. And when you drive prices down to no profit, companies cannot continue to innovate. They cannot continue to hire employees. They cannot continue to do amazing, cool things. The reason why we had this long, drawn-out conversation about autonomous vehicles and Tesla Motors is because Elon Musk was a part of something valuable. Oh, yeah, this is Peter Thiel, co-founder of
Oh,
PayPal,
okay. That's who it
by the
is.
way.
Yeah, right. Yes. Now it
Um,
so much. You know what? Everything you just read about it, like it suddenly shifted what it sounded like the minute I knew it was Peter Thiel. You're like, oh yeah, okay. Now I get it. I get what he's saying. I get who is saying it.
yeah. He tells his story of how he had a payments company, and Elon Musk had a payments company, and he was like, we noticed that we were going to start competing against each other head to head, driving down costs. He's like, and we didn't want to do that, so we partnered and created essentially a monopoly, and we're able to weather the storm. And now they're going on to do cool stuff. And so he's like, the cool part about being a monopoly is you can command higher prices and value for what you're doing because literally no one else can offer it. Again, think Google, which then enables you to invest in both people and in new other ideas to go after. It's like the biggest problem that a lot of big companies make, like Google, is they kind of get a little bit of jelly of other companies, and then they go into the Me Too game. It's like, and there's no value there. It's like, think about Google Docs. Do they make any money off of that? Not really, because they just copied. And yeah, there might be a few things in there that are different and compelling. It's like, but not enough so that they can actually make any real money off of that. It's not different, and which I think is interesting. And so I'm just getting started. I'm only like through chapter 4 of it, which is fine. But
Peter Thiel
one of
also pays people to not go to college.
does he?
Yeah, he's that kind of a guy. He thinks that college ruins the best minds, and that if you are the best mind, the last thing you should do is go to college and be conformed. You should step out and be free.
Be free. Yeah, he I could see that. Again, and so he drives this. He creates it's a term. It's called like a creative monopoly, and it's this idea of you became a monopoly because you did something creative. Again, better than anybody else that no one can really copy you. He's like, and what's cool about that is it gives customers more choices by adding entirely new categories of abundance to the world, and very altruistic in
Right.
that particular sense. Yeah, monopolies, they solve a unique problem, and he's like, and so you want to avoid competition, and he goes into this whole thing of how do you define yourself, and he's like, companies who are dying try to define their market super narrow. So that they're winning that really narrow market.
Yeah, which reminds me of the whole when the iPod Touch came out, and I remember back before we were doing the podcast, and we were saying, well, it's obviously going to disrupt how gaming is done, and it's going to make life a lot harder on the PlayStation Vita and the Game Boy. And the Sony gaming exec came out and was like, no, it's not going to be a problem because we don't compete with them. That's a multimedia device.
Nintendo
and we're
did the
video
same
games.
thing.
And you're just like, the PlayStation Vita's gone. Like, come on, guys, come on. Which is like you said, he just defined his market narrower in order to.
Yeah, he's like, whereas monopolists tend to define it as wide as they can. Like if you talk to Google, they're like, well, we make our money serving ads, and advertisers that's on television, newspaper, magazines, online. If you think about it, we're really just a very small piece of the pie. We don't have a monopoly at all.
Right.
Is how Google talks about it. You're like, and so he's like, that's how you can tell if it's a creative monopoly, because they're trying really hard not to sound like one. And whereas he's like, you can tell a company's in trouble if they narrow it down and like, oh no, we're not competing against them. No, we're different and we're special.
Yeah, we are number one. We are the biggest out there unrivaled.
Right? Yeah. Nintendo, like we're the number one handset gamers that play Nintendo games.
Right.
Like that's fantastic.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Well, and
sometimes I feel like HP falls into that category too. But,
it's Oh, jeez.
We have the number one market share for HP printers on ink.
Yeah.
Hey, that's
Congratulations.
amazing.
I think one of the things that's interesting to take away from what he's saying and sort of to broaden it is that um he I see why you put those articles together now. Yeah, part of it is it is not illegal in America to have a monopoly. It is illegal in America to abuse a monopoly. And is something that I think is a nuance that a lot of people like they forget and or they just never learned or they didn't know or never understood. Like we do support monopolies, we support big ones, and we really try to keep them going. Our deal is we try to make sure that that we look to see if there's abuses in place, and if they're abusing it, then we have laws in place that either turn them into, if they have to be a monopoly by the nature of what they're doing, like the power companies, we turn them into a public utility. If they don't have to be, well, then we have an option to break them up, like we did with AT&T and Pacific Bell back in the day. Or if we, or we can do what we did with Microsoft, where you just tell them, hey, stop it. And
Or else. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's different options, but yeah, he's absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with them in principle, and yeah, if you're bringing so much value that nobody else can compete, that's super great. It's awesome. I think what's really interesting in that, I do really like that frame idea of look at companies that are trying to define themselves in a more broader category. And a lot of people will talk about the cable companies as regional monopolies. And that's why we get such bad service for such high cost. And if you talk to the CEOs, though, they'll sit there and go, no, we're not. There's all sorts of competition. Like there's competition. You can move to different cities to go and get somebody else's cable. And we've got competitors within our market that can't use any of our like high speed cables. So, but they're always trying their hardest to be like, no. Very competitive market, super competitive market. Just, you cannot believe the amount of competition that is in this market. And you're sitting there going like, I only have one choice in my market for who I can buy, or two tops. And you have agreements worked out with the other cable companies to make sure that that doesn't happen, or laws in place to solidify your position as the only provider in a given region. That's like the definition of a monopoly. And by the way, we can show that you're abusing it because in regions where there is competition, it costs a lot less and they get better performance. So yeah, I think, that's interesting. It's a cool way to look at it. That does bring up another question. So is this good or bad then? Gillette is suing Dollar Shave Club, the guys that sell really funny commercials and then give you complimentary, really give you complimentary razor blades. Yes, the whole idea of Dollar Shave. So the whole idea of Dollar Shave Club was you pay $1 and you get regular razor blade replacements for cheap. How they do that is they can sell you cheap razor blades. And I think we've talked about this before, but it's basically really expensive razor blades like Gillette. The multi-use ones are high grade steel, so they don't corrode over time, because that's when they tend to catch and like hurt and don't last very many shaves. Whereas cheap razor blades, their strategy is use a low grade of steel that will degrade really quickly, but just put an oil cover over it. So the first time you shave, you pull all the oil off the razor blade, and then by the next day when you go to shave again, the blade's basically done. It's got nicky and it's just terrible. So it's really only good for one use, but it's such a low grade steel, you can kind of afford to do that. Whereas the more expensive ones, the better blades, better heads. So Gillette really focused on the super expensive ones. Dollar Shave Club said, hey, we're going to find ways to go around Gillette, one of the world's biggest producers of razor blades, and we're just going to sell these.
I have a Gillette razor.
I
think I've had the same one for over a year.
What?
Remember we talked about this? Yeah, I shave like once a week, and I've continued to use. I honestly don't even remember the last one I bought. It's been over a year.
What is that movie where the guy is talking about how he's got the best like pair of underwear he's ever had because he's been using the same ones for years, and whoever it is, it's like maybe it's his wife is like, what are you talking about? Like, I just throw away the oldest ones once a week and like add new ones in, and um,
Pretty
and
sure that's not the case.
okay.
Hey, Jess, are you secretly buying me razor blades when I shave? Nope, not my case.
All right. So yeah, that's fine. Well, I think we talked about it. I'm one and done
Yeah,
because I use
yeah.
so
You super cheapies.
well actually
But like
yeah.
you snap them in half, right, or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
I do. I use a straight razor, so they cost like 25 cents a blade. But and yeah, I use them once and I'm done.
I looked it up.
But
So Dollar Shave Club, they've got 3 different subscription levels actually. So they got the
yeah,
Dollar Shave Club, which I don't think they'll ever get rid of. Probably their most popular one though is they have a $6 a month subscription, and there's I'm trying as fast as I can to click through the how it clicks, which essentially a little bit better razor, I guess. And by the way, the $1 a month is $1 a month plus $2 shipping and handling. I'm like, that's $3 a month. Sure.
yeah,
Whatever.
especially since the $6 a month ships free.
Yeah. And so does the $9 a month one, which is a better one. Plus, they've got exclusive products. Now, the other one that is super similar to them.
They're so good. They've got the box has the quote, a quote. I like to shave with the dull razor, said by no one ever. That's hilarious.
Right?
They're so good.
Yeah. And then let's see here. And then there's Harry's. By the way, I was looking all this up because I'm like, man, I guess mine's getting dull or something. I don't know. And for Harry's, they are it's a what does it say? It should say it somewhere. Oh, here we go. They have shave plans that start at $6 per month as well, and which comes with some cartridges, a razor handle, which is weighted core for balance and control, of course. Some foaming shave gel. Do you use foaming gel of any sort, or are you more of an oil person?
I actually use like the traditional like I got into it at some point. So I got like the little like moleskin brush with like some nice like sudding things you put all over your face.
Do you?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right. Wow, you're fancy pants.
I know.
I use the one that comes out as a gel and then it'll foam up on its own.
That's pretty.
You know?
That's pretty good actually, but it's not as much fun.
Yeah,
It doesn't
works
feel
well.
as
I'm
good.
trying to
but it's fun.
find so where's Gillette's? So I love it how it's like, Shave Club, join the club. I loved it in the comments, because Gillette's they're suing Dollar Shave Club right now.
Right.
And in one of the comments, someone was like, "Oh, I wonder where Gillette got the idea of a subscription model."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, super funny. But I'm trying to see how it works. I'm just looking for pricing. That's all I want. I want a shave plan. Yes. Tell me a price. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, here we go. The classic plan this is interesting. It's about $350. What does about mean?
Right.
Why would you say it's about that? And then their advanced plan is about $450, and then the ultimate plan is about $490. Interesting. They priced them super, which looks like it's just a different type of blade. It's got different levels of lubrication. You get one, whatever. Okay, interesting.
Right. So
I've never actually compared prices on options.
So I will qualify this by saying this was a piece of advice given to me by an employee of the Art of Shaving. So, take it with a grain of salt. But I was sitting there talking about the cost of blades and stuff, and how I was like, yeah, honestly, I really like doing the straight razor shave with the replaceable blades, as this is the cheapest way that I've ever found to shave regularly, because the blades are just so expensive. And he kind of looked at me quizzically and he said, "You're trying to tell me that you're going to take the sharpest piece of metal that you ever use on a regular basis, you're going to scrape it across your face, and your goal is to save as much money as possible?" I was like, "Oh, I mean, And he's like, "How about this? How about you go save money on your coffee every day?" It's like, and actually invest in something that's going to be good for your face. I was like, well, I mean, it is a really good. Like, I'm not going cheap on the blades. I'm just all right. You know what? It's just, but it was an interesting. It's a good sales tactic, but it's one that I've had a hard time arguing against. It's like, yeah, honestly, if you are going to spend money on something, that is one of the ones where you'd sit there and go, it's more justifiable than a lot of the other places that I spend stupid money. Shaving is an interesting thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially because I'm somebody who's like, despite the fact that I have had a beard since I was a teenager, I really like shaving, and I like the whole process of it and doing it and being engaged in it. And so I kind of go deeper into the rabbit hole of learning how to shave than most people. But most people hate it. It's something that it's part of it's like brushing your teeth. And
love brushing my teeth. Love flossing. Yeah. So, anyways, so Gillette is suing Dollar Shave Club, and the question is this good from a monopolistic standpoint or not? Everyone seems to be like, it's weird. Everyone hates Gillette, just like they hate HP.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, come on. I get it to a point. And so everyone's coming out like, oh, Gillette, they're so mean. They're just suing them because they're trying to copy them and whatever. And I think Peter Thiel would say, no, good for Gillette. Protect what you made. You got a monopoly.
It's funny. I have the tagline, because if you can't innovate, you litigate, and which I think is true for some companies. But yeah, I mean, if you've got basically what they're actually suing them for is that oil coating, that protective coating that you put on the blades, on cheap blades, to keep them from rusting. And so like, it's a fundamental part of their whole system working. And if they can't use that patent, it's going to be a problem for the quality of their blades. And I think that for Gillette, yeah, they should be suing them, and they should protect their intellectual property. I think the problem that you run into is that Gillette has done a bad job with their messaging of saying, look, we became a monopoly, not because we're the biggest jerks, but because we were the best for so long that it was just unquestioned that you'd go and buy Gillette blades and Gillette shaving cream, and we vertically integrated everything, and we brought it all together, and we made shaving as good as it could possibly be. And so that's why we won. Now you're just looking for super cheap. Okay, we'll give you a super cheap blade option, but we're not going to let somebody run in, use our intellectual property, and to try to drive down to the lowest budget on something that Gillette would argue, come on, it's your face. Use something expensive. But I think the problem, we just have this we have a weird relationship with really expensive things, and people get really defensive about it when it's a monopoly and you don't have another choice, right? It's sort of like, why do people who hate Apple hate Apple? And part of it is they're so overpriced, right? That's one of the big arguments. And this is an argument that people have been making long before Apple was the dominant smartphone, or they were the size that they are. Back when they were a niche player, people were like, oh, they're the worst. It's just overpriced, whatever. And they had to make the argument of, no, there's tremendous value in that beyond just your specs. And Gillette is going to be forced to get into that messaging again, that it's, okay, maybe we added too many blades, but legitimately it's a great shave, and the blades last a long time, and they're very valuable. And the reason why nobody else comes in isn't just because we've locked down so much intellectual property and vertical integration that nobody else can come into it. Well, we've managed to build the best product. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's the point is that that's the message that they're going to have to go with to move forward.
And it's one of those where it's like, the idea behind companies is the value that you create is greater than the price that you charge.
Correct.
And so even if you charge a lot, it doesn't matter, which is luxury watches.
Right.
And maybe maybe that's not a great example. But maybe like I think of like Microsoft Office. The value that you get from Excel alone is it's unbelievable, especially to companies. You
Right.
think about like what they're going to enable a company to do. It's huge. And so the price that they pay Microsoft, like totally fair. I'm in.
Right.
And it really works as long as the value remains, and sometimes significantly higher, but at least higher than the price that you're paying.
Right.
Because even if you're not explicitly doing that math, we're all implicitly doing it to some degree. And I think the problem that companies like Gillette and, if we're honest about it, HP get into,
Yeah,
is that gap starts to thin some. And either A, because they charge more because they want to preserve margins or something, or currency changes and they got to deal with that, or for whatever reason it's just not perceived as valuable as it used to be.
I think one of the things that is frustrating, and both Gillette and HP fall into the same trap from a consumer perspective, but it's you sell the printer really cheap and then sell the ink for a lot more.
Yeah, people do definitely feel that, which again, I come back to, it's like, dude, it's totally fair. If you don't print a lot, you don't get charged a lot, deal with it.
Well,
like me, right? My Gillette razor is crazy cheap.
But this is you're ridiculous. The problem that I think that the problem with that, and I get what you're saying, and I do think that's fair. The problem from a perception, from a messaging view, is that you look at it and you're able to very quickly identify that you feel like you got you feel like you were suckered into this. Now it could be a great deal, the best deal you could get, and everything about it goes in your favor, but you recognize the fact that, especially when you can get an HP printer on sale with ink in it for less than the cost of 2 new ink cartridges. And because the ink cartridges look exactly the same, the average consumer doesn't sit there and go, well, these were quarter-filled ink cartridges. They were starter ink cartridges, and they don't print the same number of pages is the thing you see. Right. And but consumers don't necessarily recognize that. And unless they're told, unless that message is made clear. And so there becomes this, I think, oftentimes,
at the end of the day, what they should do is charge a little bit more and have a full cartridge.
Yes.
Right? That's what you should do. But somewhere along the lines, because they had the money, they did the customer research and realized that they could play these games. And I think I agree with you. And these companies are great at playing right up to that line, where it's like us when we were kids, right? I was fantastic at pushing your buttons, getting you to the point where you wanted to attack me, and then backing off, right? And then and you would just be totally riled up, and when you were done, I'm airing dirty laundry here as a kid. It's fantastic. Right. But as you know intimately, every once in a while I'd step over that line, and you would just get ticked at me, and even if you didn't, you still didn't like what I did, and you felt like I got away with something. And I feel like these companies are doing the same thing. I do not represent HPI or HPI's opinions. Just feel the need to insert that one real quick here. Anyways, I'm totally going to get in trouble. Hopefully my boss doesn't listen to this. Anyways, I feel like some of these companies, right, they play right up to this line. And there's customers who are like, geez, I'm not gonna be upset about this, or I'm not gonna do anything about it, but it's just gonna make me mad. but eventually they will have an opportunity to do something about it, right? Their blades are going to run out, the printer's going to stop working, and now choice comes in. And did you treat your company right? And or treat your customer right? And and I think it's because they have some other motivation other than what's best for the customer in mind, and that's what we're seeing here. And that honestly is the big risk with what Peter Thiel is talking about. And that's where opportunities for other companies come in, where if you take your eye off the ball and you start to worry about maintaining your profits instead of maintaining your customers' happiness, that thing that you did so well that no one else could copy, when all of a sudden people just don't care as much, it's okay, well, what's the next thing you can do better? And and I get it. It's natural for a company to want to hang on for as long as they can. That's normal. It's hard to go off and do something new. Ask Angry Birds, Rovio, about that, or any mobile game studio for that matter.
Yeah, very few of them really.
And so, so I get it. But yeah, so I get it. And then there's interesting ones like Facebook, right? So they announced that apparently, and I never actually used this, but apparently they had a photo syncing capability in the Facebook app. So you take a photo on your phone and it would sync it to a private album on your Facebook account. Essentially what Apple's Photos, but maybe a better example of that is the Google Photos backup thing. So Facebook had that, and they are now cutting that out of the main Big Blue app and moving it into Moments, which is another independent app that they have. So if you want to continue to back up your photos, you got to download the Moments app, which apparently is not a part of the Creative Labs thing that they're killing. They're actually like, this is their new thing, like Messenger, which they're going after. And they can totally do it because they're a monopoly. And just like with Messenger, right? They're like, people love it, people use it, it's got a special place in everyone's heart. We do it better than anybody else, which for the most part, there's some truth to that. And so therefore we can force everybody to download this and have it take up an extra spot on your phone. And that's something that they can do. And I think it's interesting. You'll see this with a lot of monopolies where they'll do things that are counterintuitive at first. And it's because they're just looking at the world differently than when you have a ton of competition.
Right.
That's one where I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. It's probably good for Facebook. I'm not 100% sure how, but it's probably good for them. I think it's neutral for customers other than a slight annoyance at the very beginning. But again, that's it. Like those are the kind of things that you see monopolists try to do. And I must admit that Google has done a fantastic job of not doing things like that.
Yeah.
For the most part, though they still mostly only make money off of one thing, which I think is fascinating. And a lot of these places where we see them not acting like a monopoly is not related to search. It's other ancillary areas around them, which I think keeps up the goodwill for search. I mean, customers don't pay directly too, obviously, just like Facebook, but which is also nice. But anyways,
it makes it easier.
It's a good book. I'm going to keep reading it, and as I've learned interesting things, I'll report back.
Peter Thiel wrote a good book.
0 to 1.
Thank you for the review. That's interesting, man. That's super interesting. Okay, we've been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I honestly, I have at least one article. I got one super fast one.
Yeah, whatever. You go for it. Those are the ones that are fine. If we needed to fill time, they'd be fun to talk about. But
okay, all right.
It's the last news episode of the year. I'm kind of.
That's okay. Hey, there may be some listeners out there where they're only an hour and a half in. So
yeah, right. They're getting shortchanged today.
We're fine. All right. So I thought this one, it's actually kind of an older one, but I thought it was good. New York Times, they wrote an interesting article talking about how in the future, your new medical team will be algorithms and your physicians. Yeah. So they threw out some interesting stats, which I thought was interesting, I guess. Um, so I was like, dang it, I'm repeating the word. Anyways, in 2014 alone, more than 750,000 additional medical studies were published. Now, granted, physicians may only need to keep up with things in their area of speciality, but even then, it's a big number. In cancer alone, 150,000 studies are published annually.
It's a lot of
So that
studies.
makes it pretty hard for your physician to keep up on the latest and greatest information that's going on. Now, humans are bad at collating, collecting, synthesizing, processing all of that information. But you know who's good at that?
Watson.
Computers like
Yes.
Watson. Exactly. And so what's interesting is that some of these medical research places, they are starting to turn more towards computers to help them actually diagnose and treat patients. Now, it's interesting, and I was telling Jessie about this, and she was like, I don't know, that just feels weird. You know, it's off-putting. And so they're like, so the future of medicine, honestly, is going to be you go to the doctor's office, you talk to your physician, you tell them all of your symptoms, and they're probably typing it into a computer or taking notes. And then if they're typing it into the computer, it then goes to a Watson-like brain that looks at all of your symptoms, diagnoses what your problem is, and then suggests a treatment. And then the physician communicates that back to you, thus getting rid of the weirdness of a computer telling me what to do. And this kind of gets back to the whole AI piece as well on learning. And I don't know about you, but for me personally, especially our daughter has had a few health issues. What we found is Jessie will read a ton, right? She'll spend a couple hours doing research and reading and learning what she can. And then we'll go to the doctor's office and they'll spend like 3 minutes just listening to us.
Yeah.
You know? And then like going, well, it could be this. And Jessie will be like, actually, I read this paper that said it's not that because of XYZ. And then she's like, so what else? Like, well, that was all I had. You know, or just to come to him and say, I think she has this. I think I should do this. What do you think of that? And, you know, oftentimes like, yeah, sure. Try it, whatever. And so, just doctors are really struggling to keep up with all the latest information. And it's hard when you have an active person like that doing the research. And so this is the future, man. Soon. This is one of the ways in which AI is going to play a role and change the way what'll be actually really cool is when someone invents that website and you just type in your symptoms and it just spits the answer back to you. Assuming, Jesse's just like, yes. Assuming they can somehow get the right insurance or coverage or something to say, this actually isn't doctor's advice, even though it really looks like it.
Right. Yeah.
Please
even though
it's a physician.
Better than this. Well, it's funny, you know, it's funny that people feel uncomfortable with that idea of doctors as trained technicians for a particular tool that the computer does the heavy lifting. But that's pretty much how everything is designed in engineering is we use really sophisticated. Yeah, exactly. Well, I use really sophisticated machines that like programs that do a huge amount of calculations for me. And I am good at two things: inputting information into that machine, A, and B, I'm good at looking at it and having a sense of, is that right or wrong?
Right.
You know, why do they teach you how to do math? It's because they want you to be able to double check the calculator. Not every time, but just when it's wrong, they want you to be able to have a sense of, well, is this the right? Does this look right or not? You know, if you were supposed to be multiplying 1,000 times 100 and you get an answer of 3, well, okay, something's wrong. And right. And that's what the role the doctor plays. They get a lot of information, they learn a lot, and then based on that, effectively, like the analogy would be up until this point and doing hand calculations for everything. And all of a sudden you're going to be, you know, they've been tallying all the banknotes by hand. Now you're going to have them a computer with Excel, and they're going to keep track of all of the banking information with a computer. And yeah, it's kind of weird and uncomfortable because it's the first time a computer program is being done for it, and if you doubt the computer, then you'll doubt what it's doing, and there, should be some sort of weirdness in the beginning. But that's the whole point of having the doctor there. Their job is to catch the weirdness and be good with the machine, the input, the output, and yeah, you just become more sophisticated. But this goes back to my argument of I think we should be teaching first through fourth graders computer science and not math. That is a controversial that I think if Peter Thiel interviewed me, that would be mine. I think that's the obvious answer.
When you go for 2 towers.
Yeah. I might throw that one in as a bonus. But to me, I think because the idea of understanding how to use that particular machine is way more important than a lot of other stuff. And everybody becomes a trained technician. There's the one guy that designs it, and especially with the machine learning stuff, because it just gets better and better at pattern finding over time. I don't know.
By the way, I think mine is often sales. I'm like programming and sales. I think those two combined.
Yeah.
You need both the jobs and the Wozniak. But
yeah, I would agree.
My daughter's going to be super messed up. I can already tell.
Wow.
Sell me this code.
It's funny. It's funny. I don't want to tell you what I bought her for Christmas.
Don't tell me.
But I know, but that's weird, right? That's kind of a weird. That's a weird notion.
Huh?
It's her gift, but she's too young to understand it. Where if she was 10, I'd tell you because it's the surprises for her.
But it's not for her this time. I mean, it is, but it's not.
Exactly. Well, it won't be a surprise to her because she's not anticipating it.
Right. So I'm like, I'll be surprised by proxy.
Yeah, and that will be more gratifying than me just telling you. This is weird. And on that note, Merry Christmas, everybody. I think it's time to. I think we're done.
Yeah. Just one more thing. Just one more thing.
You can't stop yourself. Yeah.
That's it. It's just one of those weeks. It's okay. It's really quick. Pebble finally updated my watch. I got the new timeline.
Woo!
Pebble time.
Awesome.
Woo! It's not color because it's black and white screen, but I'm on the new Pebble time updated. Yay. And if you do have a newer watch, they actually have like health tracking and sleep tracking and stuff like that all built in now. It's amazing, but I don't have any of that because I don't have any of those sensors. The only thing that they changed, this is like super subtle thing, which only smartwatch owners will understand. My wife's just going to be like, whatever, James. They changed the buzz. It's slightly more intense than it used to be. I mean, like super subtle. You'd only recognize it if you I don't know, wore it on your wrist every day for the last year.
Yeah, that's odd.
But they switched it up, and I find myself going, "Whoa, what is that?"
I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's just like, again, I'm probably a weirdo where I recognize it, but yeah, it's just. But and I think the biggest thing that really caught my attention is, so I know a guy who got one of the new Pebble time watches. And whenever it buzzed, he would always jump. Like, whoa. And I was like, dude, what's your problem? But I found myself totally doing it at first, like going, oh, whoa, what is that? And actually like almost having a jerky. No, I wasn't quite as jerky as he was, but actually having like a, whoa, what is that? Just very interesting. And I don't know why they did it, but just one of those subtleties that you really don't think about until it happens.
Right.
And I think it just comes back to the nature of how personal these devices are.
Right.
A subtle change like that, you notice. Though it's funny. So my wife is still on iOS 8. She's not. She hasn't moved over to 9 yet. And I was having her type in a text message to somebody because I was driving and I'm a responsible person.
There we go.
And so she was like, "What is wrong with your keyboard?" And I was like, "Oh, it's lowercase." She's like, "Oh, that's so weird." I'm like, well, you get used to it, but
yeah, it's kind of nice. Instead of having to memorize which one of the arrow fill-in is uppercase and not.
Yeah, totally. Good show, man. Good show. All right, I think I'm ready to call it.
Sure, you don't got one more in you?
Oh, I do, but I'm going to let it go. Buffer, build versus buy. Great article, but we're going to skip it. All right. Classic, like, cost benefit analysis of should we build it or buy it, but it's good. Anyways, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you so much for listening to our spoiler episode, episode 221. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget, you can check out all the show notes with all the links at furlobros.com. Again, that is episode 221. And if you'd like to get the show sent, or the show notes at least, sent directly to you, plus a link to the actual audio, whatever, you can sign up on that same page down at the bottom. I am James Furlo, and the force is strong with my brother, Matthew Furlo, and we will talk next time.